Hope the future generations can get this urge. Stay woke, youngin', and avenge these nerds.
But I'm glad you wrote up media and all that, because we now have seen more diversity represented on the big screen and the small screen, and in comics and games and all that. We're even learning moments in history from media, like again what we did with Watchmen, which upset a lot of people that were like, why are we learning this event from a show when it should have been taught in school? And we jump into Falcon and Bucky, who in some way they mentioned the Tuskegee experiment, which is a real thing in our history. What are your guys' feelings of learning about important events from media, and how do you feel? And also, too, should these also be curriculum in school for our kids to learn? And Miriam was, I mean, Catarina, we'll start with you.
Okay. I think we are in a technological age, so the more we can learn within media, the better. Kids, especially now. I cannot even express how many people have learned wonderful things from TikTok. I know that there's a lot of people joking about TikTok, but there was a whole, and I'm going to bring it back to last year and all of the Black Lives Movement marches that were happening in 2020. And I am calling them marches and protests because that's what they were. And there was stuff that you weren't seeing on, and I hate to use this term, mainstream media, but not only were you seeing these things live from these kids that were there, but you're also getting history lessons in there. You're getting geography, you're getting geology, you're getting genealogy and all of this. And I'm all for it. We need to know. Too much has been covered up by these textbooks that haven't been updated in the last 60 years. And when they were written 60 years ago, were written from a very specific perspective. I wish the curriculum in school would catch up to that, but there are too many uptight white people in charge of that, and not enough money being put towards updating that material. So I'm all for the media doing it. Show us the ugly. We need to see the ugly. We need to confront the ugly within us, and then push forward, because there is no pushing forward without that.
And I'm glad you mentioned TikTok, because again, like I said in the beginning, the biggest difference now is that we have social media. We have these little guys right here, because I remember again there were videos that were put together for something that happened at a protest, that these protesters were pretty much forced to stay out past curfew, and then they all got arrested, and they shouldn't have gotten arrested. And it
And
was all compiled together from various social media video accounts and all that, from
and
every
that's the
angle.
great thing about everybody having a phone and social media. You can't hide it anymore.
Hmm.
You cannot hide. And now we're getting convictions based on that. And it sucks that that's what it took, but thank goodness we have the technology to make it start happening, because we need to hold everyone, including ourselves, accountable. So I'm 100% for it. Keep doing it. It's There are things that are out there that are hard watches, but we need to watch them. I would recommend Exterminate the Brutes on, I think it's on HBO Max.
Ooh,
Exterminate all the brutes.
recommendation. Tony.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I was unfortunately part of that majority. I would say majority, maybe, I don't know, half that learned about Tulsa because of Watchmen. At least a good enough amount for me to remember and to do the due diligence and just look something up, just read something about it. But to the point of technology, it's we have no excuse not to look anything up. There's no excuse not to put yourself and learn about something. It's all there. And if we don't learn from our history and from what is going on, we're just doomed to redo the same cycles over and over and over until, history repeats itself. There may not be a quote unquote new form of slavery or anything like that, but there are things that are there are illusions of it, allusions to the Jim Crow era, allusions to everything that's happening to people, the illusions of what happened to Japanese people after Pearl Harbor, just allusions to all of this stuff, because we're not taking it seriously. We're not looking at our history and studying it and applying it. There's no more excuse of just basking in ignorance and putting your head in the sand, because you can't. We'll just call you out on it. It takes 5 seconds to look something up and say, I was wrong. You should be okay. The whole point of growing up and getting older is being okay to learn something new that changes your perspective on life. And that's all right. It doesn't make you a bad person to admit that you're wrong, and because you learned some new information. That's how we should go. We shouldn't just be stuck in our old ideals and move forward and expect, nothing to change. So I want this stuff to be in these textbooks, but I also am not ignorant to the fact that my kids aren't going to learn all this crap from textbooks. They're not going to learn it. The textbooks are there. There has to be a fundamental shift in textbook publishing, curriculum creation, what the Board of Ed finds important for exams, for state and country standards. There's so many levels of minutia that need to happen that I want it to change, but I also need to be a part of that change for the next generation to learn, so that if my kids have questions, we should be able to answer them. And if we can't answer them, we look them all up together. Because I'm not going to assume that school is going to give them all the information they need to know. There's just not enough time, and there's just not enough time for that. And that's fine too. But we as a society, it takes a village to grow the next generation. And we all are a part of that village as we do that. And not to shelter our kids into nonsense, trying to protect them or anything. Just be real about them. My kids saw what happened on January 6th. We explained it in simpler ways. Sure. My kids were watching the TV when we waited for the election that needed to end over a week. And, obviously COVID didn't help, but just asking questions and just being able to just talk to our kids about this stuff, because they're growing up with it around us. And if you expose them to this and explain it to them, it doesn't come as a shock, because they grow up and understand, versus when you hide it all from them and then you're just hit with it left and right with no way of protecting yourself. It's kind of, you don't know how to warp yourself, or don't even know if there's trust to talk to your folks about it, because they were hiding this stuff from you this entire time. I want my kids to know that you have a question, you find something difficult, you want to speak out about something you're not learning in school. I'm here and I got your back, and we can learn about this together. But it's also making sure that we as individuals and citizens of this country vote for folks that want to make sure these things are put in, because there's such a top-down process that needs to happen for what is considered necessary learning in our schools today. And I've listened to some minority folks saying Black History Month isn't enough. It's not enough. We got the shortest month of the year. Like, come on, whose fault was that? It's the shortest month of the year, and we learn about the same people over and over again. And granted, these are all legendary people, but there are more people that we could learn about. Black History Month is American history, United States history. That should just be weaved in as we learn about it. As we learn about certain times, as we go through our curriculum, points should be brought up and you learn about them, and not just worrying about Harriet Tubman, Malcolm X, MLK. Yeah, sure, great, but you should know about those guys. But there's a bunch of other people that maybe we don't have federal holidays for, that are just as important, that moved us forward. And, I think stop putting ourselves and patting ourselves in the back with a month for 28 days and just kind of make it part of the entire curriculum. I spent an entire year learning about the main 4 rivers in, of the Indus, the Euphrates, all these rivers, the river tribes. That's cool. I'm glad to know that. But we should also put more time into the stuff that made this country what it is. And, there's just fundamental change that needs to happen, from the top down.
Yeah, I totally think we should talk more about these, history that's forgotten or not shared about, because, yeah, it's still part of American history. It is American history. And the fact that we're hiding it, I don't think we should, because this is our past. This is what this country went through. And we kind of see the repercussions of everything, the consequences of it. Like, we're going through it right now because of that. And how our system is formed and our society and culture is formed is because of the history we went through. So like, it's kind of weird. Sometimes I feel like it's like so controversial in America, but like, when I think about other countries, like they always talk about, they try to invest into the citizens and people like to know their history. And here it's like we try to hide it. And I noticed, even I was thinking a lot, even thinking about even what I learned from school too, like just everything. It's just like, oh, there's a lot of propaganda, and people could think, oh, I'm like being controversial or this is a conspiracy. No, but there is a lot of propaganda, and this, a lot of it is really one-sided, and it's just, I think we should expose all of that because it's true. It actually did happen, and it's just weird that we're just stating what just happened. It's nothing like we're saying anything new or something that's a lie,
We have gotten to the point where we are sensationalizing this black trauma or like the struggle. Like we see it in media all the time where the struggle is the story. And so, like that's how we learn about 12 years a slave and this, and I'm just like, I personally cannot sit through another black trauma movie. I personally cannot sit there and watch movies where women who represent everything. I come from a very strong women family, and they're looked at as lesser, and their struggle is the story to get to the top, just to beat the man. I just want their stories. I just want real stories. Like, give us that, and in teaching us history, like, give us our history. Don't shy away from it. Like, I would like to see the stories that we heard about only on the lips of our grandparents. I mean, and not this, not this kind of, we're going to give you a story that's going to make you feel good because that's what we think you want. Like we deserve the stories that our grandparents and their grandparents told them. We deserve to see ourselves on the screen, and not, like, we are a country that has not only, the history that like built us, but we've also been the country that now glamorizes the people who lost. You know what I mean? Like our country went to war with itself, and we still have statues to this day of the losers, and they're made to be the heroes in the history books. Like, how wild is that notion that other countries have done the same thing and look at them and like, no, that's not okay. But yet we look at them like heroes. Why? Like, that blows my mind. And, we're seeing more and more where not only are these, people being looked at as heroes, but like now in these books and in these texts, we're seeing, like they're starting to change the narrative to kids. Like, you see it. I've seen, my cousins and, family members who are parents show like history books where they're starting to show like, certain things about slavery and this and this. And I'm just like, what? Like, that is definitely not how it went down. You know what I mean? So like, it's one of those things that definitely should be changed and definitely should be looked into, because it's ridiculous that we would even, try to think that those stories don't matter, and the stories that do are the ones that, are the Tyler Perry, types of stories. I am so like, I get it. Get your bag, do your thing, shuck and jive for the man. But those aren't the stories that I want to see myself represented as,
I've been like biting my tongue right now because I had a bunch of stuff to say. And I'm gonna touch on your previous question first, because it leads into where my overall thoughts on this matter. And this is gonna be an old man rant, so please bear with me. But I'm pleased that people are finding out about shit that really happened through media. But I think it's sad that nobody's willing to look up the history unless they're told the truth by a movie. Like, yeah, we thankfully Watchmen was accurate, but there's probably a bunch of people who watch Braveheart and think that shit really happened. And what I'm getting to that is if you ask, like, I know I love watching Jimmy Kimmel because he'll ask people some dumbass questions. He's like, name 15 presidents, and everyone's like stumped on the first one, but name like 13 seasons of The Bachelor, and they'll get everything. Because unless it's pop culture fed to us, we don't know the truth. Like Law, what you were talking about, like, why is it that the Confederate soldiers were elevated up? Because there was the daughters of the daughters of the Confederacy. They built a fundraiser to honor, their people as a way of backdooring these people into history to keep their losing faction alive. There's a lot of people out there. If you don't know the truth, they're gonna try to change the truth. And I'm sorry, it sounds like tinfoil hat, but like, it's because we don't look this stuff up, and we need to look this stuff up, and we need to find the truth. Because like a lot of what we see in movies, like they're gonna tell a story, they're gonna pluck it from history, and 9 times out of 10 they're gonna try to make it palpable to a general audience, which means a white audience. Unfortunately, if you're gonna have a story about the Black struggle, there's gonna be a white savior. We've seen that in Hidden Figures, and at the same time, going to what I was saying before is like, I'll ask everyone in this room, name me 4 Avengers, but name me like one genocide that may have happened within the last 100 years that didn't happen to a Black person. And it's like, the reason I bring that up is because, again, we know the stories that are told to us through pop culture and media, but like, does anybody know that today Joe Biden finally confirmed that there was an Armenian genocide 100 years ago? Like, how many people even watching this know that my people were enslaved? And I'm just saying, like, yeah, slavery did happen to a lot of people, but I don't want to diminish what happened to certain people. But what I'm saying is it's that knowledge. A lot of times we focus on like what media tells us, what social media tells us, or what a movie tells us, but we'll forget the stories that happen to other people. And so, like Law was saying, we need to hear these stories, but we need to make sure that what we're told is accurate. And maybe the better media to consume isn't. I mean, I love Winter Soldier and Falcon Winter Soldier, but learning the Tuskegee from a Marvel movie is not the same as learning about the Tuskegee Airmen from a history book or like an accurate documentary. Because on the other side too, there's a lot of documentaries out there that are pushing an agenda, and that might be to downplay certain things. So you also need to be careful what you consume. But I would definitely push more towards stuff that's verifiable, and there's a lot of messed up history out there.
Yeah, I remember someone I've lost a friend, haven't heard from them for a long time, when they said the Civil War wasn't about slavery. It was about
the states' rights crew.
It was about property. And to me,
state rights to do what though?
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. And what did you consider property?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. No, I have a friend, very close friend, like a brother from another mother. We grew up together, but like when the Black Lives Matter thing started, and like he was jumping on that bandwagon, and I'm like, do you hear yourself? What do you know about the Black experience as a white man? Like, just because you have that one Black friend, and it's like, come on, man, like pay attention. Like he's the same guy. Like once, like we were, like he was joking, like I have a friend who's from Egypt, and I had mentioned to him, like, he was saying, hey, technically I'm African American, and I mentioned this to my buddy, and he's like, what the f- is he talking about? Egypt's not in Africa. And I'm like, have you looked on a goddamn map?
Wow.
Because again, it's like, it's that, and again, this guy was a fairly smart guy, but he was one of those, education means, is like brainwashing, he wasn't like, he was like anti-school in many ways. And like, I think that definitely, that's colored a lot of future conversations, but it's that whole thing of like, I'm not going to pay attention to this source because this one lines up with my values a little bit more. And it's like, that's where it gets scary,
Yeah. I mean, I think to quickly just kind of bounce off of that too. I think it's kind of like how also people portray Egyptian history and Egyptian mythology to African history. Just like there's such a difference in how it is shown. People automatically you think Egypt, and people think of the Bible and Christianity, and like there's such a difference of where these two cultures are from when they are literally on the same continent. And it's kind of crazy because I've had that conversation. I've heard that same conversation before of Egypt's not in Africa. I'm like, yeah, it is. Yes, it is. It's all the way up north, but it's there. We popularize the history of Egypt, and there's media about it, and people go on trips, and it wasn't erased and all that other great stuff. But
let's not forget what kind of person they use to portray Egyptians in most movies.
And so for me, there has always been representation because I am the standard. I'm a straight white female. But there's been very problematic the way that women were shown in earlier depictions of television. But you also had these rays of like My Girl Friday, or excuse me, His Girl Friday, and certain roles that really stood out as strong women, sassy women, women who made their own living, that were journalists, that were, powerful women in their own right. And then, of course, I was 7 years old when I stumbled upon My Lady Diana, and the love affair of over 30 some odd years happened. That's Wonder Woman, in case anyone didn't know. So as far as representation for me, there's been tons, but there's also been like this mentality, and only speaking for myself, there's always been this growing up, and even up until like maybe the last 20 years or so, where there were certain things that I didn't watch and that I didn't pay attention to because I'm like, oh, that's not being written for me. And that would be shows that were centered around people of color, or more than LGBTQ plus, but more like Tyler Perry. I'm just going to put that out there because that's just like the first thing that popped in my mind. I wouldn't watch a Tyler Perry movie because I'm like, oh, those aren't written for me. Those stories aren't for me. These are stories by people of color, for people of color, and I need to stay in my lane. But then I realized that's where I'm going to learn. Maybe he's not the best example for that based on what some other people have said, that the stuff that he puts out, but I wasn't reading Black authors, and I wasn't watching shows that were written by people of color, not shows with people of color in it. Like, I'm not talking about the Cosby Show. I'm talking about shows that were written by people of color, by minorities, that were showing a very their truths. And once I decided, you need to get over yourself, because they're writing this to tell us their stories so that we can better understand and maybe be less assholes of people in general. And once I opened myself up to that, I saw once I saw stuff written by the people that were writing about themselves, then I started really noticing how mainstream television shows and stuff were writing people of color, were writing the LGBTQ community as these like rampant stereotypes. And now when I go back and watch some stuff, like when they put an old show, and I don't remember what the show was, but I'm like, oh, I used to love this show, let me start watching it. And I saw how problematically they were showing just everybody, including women. and I was just like, I can't even imagine having been in the position growing up and seeing that that's how they're representing you as a people. You know what I mean? Like, even just like when I see some things where they show women in a really bad light, in general, as just whiny, shrilly, horrible, vindictive people. And yes, there are people out there, but I don't want that to be the reflection of me. But now that I've opened, in the last 20 years, have opened up my perspective of seeing things written authentically. When I go back and watch these other things in media, I'm like, wow, like the words are too small. Let me just leave it at that. But I think you understand what I'm trying to convey here. Like, It is so important to open up your perspective and watch things that aren't necessarily that you think are for you, because they are for you. They're for you to learn, for you to understand, for you to grow. And I think a lot of people just stay in their wheelhouse, and that just perpetuates bad stereotypes and racial profiling and just shittiness all around.
Yeah, I was definitely going to talk about that, going hand in hand with like how women are portrayed and also being Asian American. So there's like a lot of fetishization of just like the Asian female. And yeah, and it's also like I'm saying that's also from like my own experiences. Actually, just yeah, there's like knowing like some cases. There's like trafficking also going on here in America because of these fetishization, and yeah, it's just like for me it's just really disgusting. Like the way just how people like view not just only Asian people but even other cultures and races too, like they get fetishized for being exotic, and it's just like us being ourselves, but like they're stereotyping us in a different way or boxing us, and it's just like we're just seen as this like thing of object of like sexual like pleasure or something. Um and this is like, to be honest with you, like I love anime, but this is also kind of my issue with like the anime culture. It's just like it gets pretty weird, but I know what this one anime is trending, and it's like literally like hentai. I mean, hentai is like
I know
anime
what you're
porno.
talking about. What you
Yeah.
mean.
Yeah, and it's weird, not like, because like, you know, I know like, okay, people are into porno and all that, but it's just like, but it's like the story behind it is about rape, and I'm just like, this is being normalized and people are like laughing about it. And this is the thing about the culture. I noticed it with also even with social media and like the, you know, like, a culture and like everything. Like I don't know why, but when it comes to rape, it's like people laugh about it for some reason, and I think it's like scary how uh people can just brush that away. You know, the idea of not like consensual sex, it's like that's blurred a lot too, and that's like not really talked about in real life, because there's like, you know, it's like a lot of like social interactions people aren't aware of and never really had. People don't have these conversations a lot, so there's like a lot of unawareness I noticed when it comes to these kind of things. And and it kind of sucks because as being female, like when we're sharing about these, you know, issues about like, oh, like being fetishized, or you know, even like the idea of, oh, like rape, and just to, you know, to just like share this out, like people think that like, we were just bitching around, like it's just people think like we're just like, this extremists that they don't take us seriously at all, and we're just sharing, hey, like this is a real issue that goes on in for women in this country, not only in this country but in everywhere. The idea of misogyny is like every culture, and yeah, it's like, I don't know, for me, I'm just kind of sharing this as growing up, especially being in the like in a, you know, being in the Asian community too. Like it's like really scary how people are unaware, even for my own people, like they don't really have my own back either. Like they'll it's funny because like, you know, we talked about even colorism. That's a huge like colorism problem in the Asian community. So like even though I'm kind of light skinned, but like there's like lighter skinned people, for people like lighter that your skin is, that's how beauty is like, you know, treated, and that's more accepted, and people like, I don't know, like they kind of gravitates more towards like people who have lighter skin in general. And it's just like, why is that our beauty standard? Like why, even for females, like I have so many of my female friends that they're so insecure because of these beauty standards are so high on them. And it's just like, why is it like, why is a society or a culture so formed in that idea? And it's just like, if you look up in Google search about beauty, it's like you'll see the stereotypical person of like what beauty standard is, and it's also the skinny person too. So like for me, I kind of hoping to see more of like, I guess, more media, just like different, you know, shapes of bodies. Like there's so many beautiful shapes, and like the way also like it's seen is based on like the porn industry too. Like, oh, this like crazy, like, oh, like these heavy boobs and busts, but it's like it's so unrealistic, and people, you know, get surgery for these type of to get that type of form and body, and for even for women to like keep doing that for themselves just to get this acceptance and appreciation for their, just to be normal. It's just like, I think it's just sad to see that in our culture and society. And for me, I'm just like hoping, I'm seeing it more though, like people are bringing it up. I noticed people are being more accepting to like what we're saying, the concerns we're saying. But I think it just goes both ways. I know even for other females, they're unaware of that too. And they're like, oh, there's nothing wrong. Why are you bitching out? Like, well, you shouldn't be bitching out about this whole thing. You're just like, you know, you're just being too emotional about it. But it's just like, it's a real thing. And I feel like both females and males, we should like come together and really examine this. And I know in different countries, like they actually have classes in terms of rape, like how, like for the girls in schools, like the girls have to, I think it's like somewhere in Africa, I forgot which country, but they actually, because like the rape is like really high. In the case of rape is super high, it's kind of normalized over there too. So like what they have to do in like those classes and schools is like they have to train the girls how to say no to any attacks, like, you know, because it's like not really taught a lot. So you have to teach this to kids, like, hey, how to say no, how to defend yourself. And even for the boys to also defend the girls too when they get attacked, or when like someone's being pushy about it, like how to speak up. Like I think that's also not really talked about, but I'm hoping that we could have more conversations. How can we tackle this? How can we you know, like be more aware of this too? So yeah.
Thank you for that.
Get more, you know, a more diverse writing staff, get more diverse artists drawing these things, you know, filmmakers who are diverse, you know, they're gonna give you a more truer experience, you know. But on the other hand, it's like if you're a bunch of white guys writing a black character, and you try, and you I think you guys know what I'm talking about. Like there's some people who try too hard to be black as white writers. That shit's apparent, you know, and you're gonna notice that, especially, you know, if you've been around real black people, you're gonna be like, I know no one who talks like this, and this is a caricature. This is bad, you know. And like I feel like as a creator, you have to go out of your way to really f this up, you know. It's like just if you can't do it, just get somebody who can do it. Work with people of color, you know, work with people, you know, of different orientations to tell, or different sexualities or genders or whatever, to help you tell the story.
Sure, the last 10 years have been the three main white guys, you know, Iron Man, Thor, Captain America. And that's fine. You finish the story, round it out, but they've recognized that there's more stories to need to tell. Black Panther was great. Captain Falcon is great. I can't wait for Eternals. Eternals, like, they're one of their most diverse casts.
Mm-hmm.
They have a legitimately blind person there. Just all around, different spectrums, colors, everything is in this cast. That's part of the reason why I'm excited to see it, you know, as opposed to also my mutant soapbox that we talk about. I'm just really excited to see bringing all these characters together. So I think Disney's doing a damn great job. You know, if you're not able to tell that story, do the research, do the work, because then that tells us you're authentic about what you're trying to tell. And that's not just your skewed bias of what the struggle is. You know, I think I don't know if all of you saw Soul. I think Soul had some bits and pieces that were pretty dope. I love the barbershop scene. I think the barbershop scene was really good. I know there was some controversy in the fact that we really like focused more on Tina Fey's character than Jamie Foxx's character, but there were aspects of you know, Black life that I saw in that movie that I thought was pretty cool to see. And then, you know, I think as we just keep these media just keep stepping and moving forward, taking from each other, looking at the examples in the past, we're going to see more and more diversity for years to come for all of us to consume. And it makes us better as people. And I'm looking forward to that.